Good day, everyone, and welcome to Blind Spots. I'm your host, Gail McDonald, and I'm happy to be here with you today. I hope your Tuesday is getting off to a great start, and I would like to share with you a little bit about what Blind Spots is in case you haven't listened before. Blind Spots is exactly about blind spots, the things that we don't see that might be happening in our lives that we're uncertain of maybe how to change, or maybe we don't even know what they are. I've had some great guests up until now, and I'm just so grateful for these folks to have shared some wonderful information with us. And hopefully we'll see them again in the near future. I'm going solo today as a podcaster. And one thing I have found to be a blind spot that I'm slowly uncovering is that podcasting is a whole lot of work. And the biggest challenge that I've had is not about what will I talk about, what guests will I bring, what can our topics be. It's about, oh my gosh, there's so much great information out there, and there's so many wonderful people to share it. That how do we make it so that it just doesn't go on and on and on and end up in a rabbit hole? So what I'd like to tell you about today's episode is that it is the unseen saboteurs of connection. And there are so many things that are needing awareness. And once we do become aware, then the likelihood exists that we could learn what possibly we could do about it, because it does take work. The things that I'm going to share with you today are skills. And like any other skill, playing a piano, riding a bike, driving a vehicle, learning how to program, and write code, they're all skills, as are understanding what gets in our way, how to emotionally regulate, and how to be less reactive with the people that we come across in the situations that we have to deal with on a daily basis. Spoiler alert, like any other skill, it takes time, and it takes patience, and it takes making mistakes and even failing sometimes. But lately I've been reading a lot of information on how the amygdala, otherwise known as the lizard brain, has a very, very big effect. And some people that I talk to aren't even aware that it's something that occurs within our minds. So it's interesting to know that there are still many, many people that feel that perhaps they don't have as much control over their minds as they really, really do. And that's taken me a long time, to learn about it, understand it, believe it to be true, and I'm working at it, but I still have a really long way to go as well. But once you get some tools, which we're also going to discuss, and you choose to practice them in spite of what happens each day, sometimes it may go the way you want it to, and other times things may not, and you might go, well, I'm just giving up. Please keep going, because eventually over time, when you implement these certain tools into your day-to-day, then slowly but surely things will shift, and possibly for the better. So this is what the show is about today. I have pages and pages of notes, so I'm not sure if I'm going to get to the end. But once we are at time, then I will wrap, and possibly in the next podcast, we'll continue where we left off. Okay? So I'm grateful to a listener that actually sent in, I found it to be a very impactful story about our normal and what is our normal. And when we get into a new relationship, and maybe this is the person we're planning on, being with for a period of time, for maybe even the rest of our lives. And when I read this article, I thought, wow, what a great way to kick off the information that I wanted to share with you. So what this person wrote, and thank you, CM, for sending this in. I am so appreciative of your efforts. So they start with, And I really appreciate it when people type out or write out what they're thinking. So the thought-provoking in one's mind. I think a major blind spot for most people is understanding that normal, in quotations, is just what you grew up with. And there really is no normal. That is a really big, strong word to define because what's normal for me may not be normal for the next person. It may not be normal for my friends. It might not even have been normal for my husband. Some of you may heard that I have one brother, and my husband grew up with 15 siblings. So, bit of a difference there in family culture and family dynamics. The first time I went to visit all of his family, I just was so overwhelmed, but got used to it very quickly because they're such a great bunch of folks. So, what is the normal? The normal is what's normal for you. And are we taking into consideration other people's normals? And that's normal for them. And that's okay. We get to be our own normal. And yet, where is that sweet spot in the middle where we learn, understand, accept, maybe even behave a little bit differently when we're around other people that have different social, societal, familial norms? So CM goes on to say it comes up in relationships of all kinds all the time. Cues misinterpreted because they mean one thing in someone's upbringing and something vastly different compared to someone else's. How true. For example, at our house with my mom, when you visited someone, you talked the whole time. Typically, that's why we visit, is to talk and exchange information and share what's going on in our lives. However, in my husband's family, they don't. They come in, pick up a paper, and just be together. So I had to tell him not to do that at mom's house, and I had to learn to just shut my mouth, CM's words, not mine, and stop constantly engaging in conversation at his mom's. LOL. Love it. Absolutely love it. One thing we want to be aware of is possibly someone is more introverted or extroverted. And so if we just pay a little bit of attention as to the behaviors that are being received from us, then it might give us a little bit of a clue as to how we might just modify our behavior to build a better relationship. And what is something you thought was normal growing up, but later realized was just your family's way of doing things once again? Really have a think on that. Be aware of it. Back to emotional intelligence is understanding some of the emotions that the other person might be feeling based on how you are behaving. So how incredible is this to everyone of the relatability? I I would hope at some point I could say, well, for the thousands of you listening out there, I'm sure it's relatable to everyone. We get new jobs, we make new friends, we meet someone, and we connect with them as our partner. There's always going to be something that may get in the way of being the best relationship we could have because we all default to who we are and what we've learned and what we've experienced. It's quite interesting. The idea that normal is just a personal default shaped by upbringing is a powerful lens for understanding miscommunication, especially in relationships. And we need to consider decoding each other's normal. We don't want people to change. We just want them to understand where we're coming from. And we need to understand where they're coming from and possibly just use different ways and means of communication. And years back when I was learning more about this, I began to really see my husband's way of communication in a very different light. And I thought, well, if I see his different, then obviously he sees mine different, and I'm not the perfect one. in this relationship. Well, nor is he actually, but that comes with a lot of a lot of strength to say, yep, not perfect for sure, and a lot of awareness. But I thought, well, I'm just going to attempt to explain to him what I need. And if anyone caught Colin D. Smith's podcast, Colin was talking about listening and sharing with whomever you're talking to what you really need from them at that time. So if I wanted him to explore a solution with me, I would let him know. Or if I needed to just talk about something, I would say, this is all I want. So I wasn't really changing myself. I was just requesting from him what I needed from him at that moment. So have a listen to Colin's podcast on listening. It for me, it was, I mean, I thought I was a good listener because I'm a coach by profession. And after listening to Colin, it really opened my eyes to even more things as to how I could improve my listening skills. And that's another thing too. If you do improve your own listening skills, then possibly, fingers crossed, other people may, well, first of all, they'll really appreciate it. And secondly, they might think, wow, that seems to work really well. Maybe I could be doing that. Maybe I could become a better listener. Maybe I could allow myself to let that person finish their sentence. And think of the efficiency of a conversation if we let people speak about what they're going to speak about without making an assumption, and then they need to explain, and then we need to ask more questions. Allow that person the space, and then reserve our thoughts until after they're done. And that's not easy for a lot of people because, according to Oscar Trimboli, who is a listening guru, he talks about the different saboteurs that get in our way, our listening villains, he calls them. And you can just Google him, Oscar Trimboli, and you will see the different saboteurs. I won't go into that in detail right now, but it's pretty interesting because if you read his information, you may identify which is the saboteur that is most natural for you. So I was identified as um, an interrupter, and I went, oh, I don't like that one very much. And then the other saboteur was somewhat of a fixer. So when people were giving me a story or giving me their conversation, I would be thinking, okay, how can I help them fix this? I was making an assumption, which is the biggest topic today. And that's what we tend to do when we don't listen effectively and when our mind goes all over the place as to, I know exactly what I'm going to say to them. Well, how can you say that if you don't even know what they're going to say? And it's tough. Being an effective listener is really, really challenging. And it's possible. It takes a lot of work. I've been working on listening for 20 years, and I think I'm okay at it. However, there's still room to grow. And just to dial back, I hope we get to this topic today. Your lizard brain, that part of your brain that says, wait a minute, let's go for this. We know exactly what's best for them. No, we don't. Okay. So there's a couple of key pieces today that I want to share with you as well. And like I said, hopefully we'll get to that. All right. So there is no normal. There's only what you grew up with. And the real work of love is learning each other's language, even when it's silent. And some of you may relate to being in a relationship or just being in dialogue or maybe being in a room with a couple of people. And some people are silent. And that's just how they are. And then the rabbit hole opens up and the lizard comes to life and says, I wonder what you did to piss them off. Or maybe they're upset at you because whatever. We make an assumption that their silence is something that we did. And I'm a recovering people pleaser. So I took it upon myself years ago to make sure that everyone was happy. And then I realized that was an impossibility. Plus, It's not my responsibility. It's not my responsibility to make other people happy. I love seeing other people happy and I love making other people happy. But we need to do that, not at the expense of ourselves nor the expense of others. You want to do that willingly, you want to do it joyfully, and most importantly, expect nothing in return. So we do have choices. We can choose. The only species on the planet that has the ability to do that. So let's just take advantage of it. Okay. So with assumptions, I'd like to start by sharing with you a book I have read a couple of times, and I will definitely read again. And a little bit later on, I'll share a few other books with you that are relevant to what I'm sharing with you today. So, Don Miguel Ruiz, here's the book here. And I'd say it's a must buy, it's a must have, it's a must keep, because he's written this book called The Four Agreements. And all it is four short life lessons. And the first one is be impeccable with your word. In other words, do what you say you're going to do and be reliable and have integrity. Don't make promises you can't keep. All right? Be respectful. Think about what you're saying. And when my dear friend Susan Sneath and I were doing our online talk show, she came up or shared an acronym of THINK. So asking yourself, is what I'm about to say thoughtful, helpful? Is it insightful? Is it necessary? And is it kind? And if all those five things can't be checked, then maybe reserve your comments or maybe talk to them in private by offering them feedback in a way that it's kind. All right? If it's really important. The second agreement is don't take things personally. And it's, oh my gosh, are you kidding me? How can I not take things personally? This person has an opinion about me and they think I'm this, that, and the other thing. So I better buckle down and I better really change that. Great. Person one. Person two comes along and something happens and we make an assumption and we think, okay, well, maybe they're right. Maybe I'm wrong. And the amygdala goes into high gear and says, well, now you better change to adapt to what that person is expecting of you. I would say any relationships that are that stressful and people's expectations of you are to change in the way they expect you to behave, or even what you believe in and what you value, maybe it's time to revisit the relationship. And back to a previous episode of Blind Spots, Andy Vargo, the awkward guy, um, that is his handle. Andy's the awkward guy, shared the story of when he was shaving his mustache and he slipped and it just kind of went off kilter. And he managed to fix it up, and then he was okay to do his presentation. And we talked about the fact that, you know, if anyone is criticizing what happened with Andy's mustache, then Andy just really doesn't want to be in the same room. And it's so true. It's like people are trying their best sometimes in this crazy world to deliver information that's helpful for folks and maybe gives them some hope. And if they're looking at your shoes or your hairstyle, they're missing the point, right? Like, don't shoot the messenger. People are putting themselves out there. So be kind, right? The third agreement, and the one we're going to focus on today, is don't make assumptions. Well, how do we not make assumptions when we've got this part of our brain, which is quite a primitive area, as I've learned from some authors that are into neuropsychology, and they're scientists, and they consensually have said, the message I get from all of them is that when we make assumptions, the lizard brain jumps in and it's automatic. There likely is no one on this planet that won't have an involuntary thought about what's just happened in their world, such as someone cut you off in traffic, and the first thought most of us have involuntarily is that, what the bleep is wrong with that person? Like, why are they so ignorant? Why are they so rude? And we just go on about this, and yet we have a choice. So when your mind is at that critical crossroads, and yes, you're thinking you just want to really lean on the horn and ram into the back of them, have a think on that and ask yourself, is that really what you want to do? What is that trigger? Why is this so important to you? How do you know that this person didn't get some really emergent information right now and they have to go and they're not even thinking? Maybe a relative has been rushed to the hospital or something like that. Maybe they've just lost someone and they're coming home from the hospital. We don't know any of that. We don't know their story. We need to take a deep breath and learn to be patient with ourselves as we become patient with others, and think about what is really happening in their lives or what has happened to make them feel that this is okay. And Oprah wrote a book, and I'll share that with you a little bit later. And it's about that very topic. So a few good resources today that I hope you'll take advantage of. So don't make assumptions, but if you do, please challenge your assumptions and think about what you're thinking about. And if you have to use a sense of humor and say, really? Do you think really that's the case? Getting back to CM's story about the family dynamics. You walk in and your family's chatty. It's the first time you meet them, and they're all doing their thing and they're quiet. One's reading the paper, and maybe they greet you, and that's nice. And then it continues on that way. And the involuntary thought could be, oh, well, they don't like me at all. This relationship can't go anywhere because nobody's paying any attention to me. And since when did you become the center of attention, right? Or could you think, well, this is just how they are. I'll pick up a book, I'll do what they're doing. That's kind of like monkeys, monkey see, monkey do. Okay, if I want to feel like I belong, as per Paul Hari, who is also on the Blind Spots podcast, then maybe I need to learn to adapt a little bit. Maybe I need to learn to observe. Maybe I need to be less about me and all about community. And what responsibility do I have to support myself feel like I do belong? Okay. And the last agreement, and this one almost has like a double meaning, always do your best. Oh, how can I do my best every single day? I've got kids, I've got a job, I've got, a house to clean and all of the above. How can I do my best? Well, it doesn't mean being superhuman every day, wearing your cape. So let's all do that right now. Let's take off our capes, hang them in the closet, maybe give them away so somebody can use them as a Halloween costume. We're not superheroes in this life. And so if you're best on one day, when you're feeling not great, maybe you had a bad sleep, maybe you've got a migraine, maybe you've got a cold, and you manage to make your kids a peanut butter sandwich for lunch and accidentally give them a can of pop. I know most of us wouldn't do that, but hey, that's not going to hurt them one day out of 365 days. Then that is your best. And when we're at our worst, our best isn't going to be equal to our best when we're at our best. And we have those days and celebrate those days. Celebrate the days that you make a peanut butter sandwich and put a Coke in their lunch. It's all good. Nobody's going to die from a peanut butter sandwich. Well, unless they're allergic, but that's another story. Okay, so assumptions. Oh, wow. So I did pull this out of Don Miguel Ruiz's book. Man, I love his information. He's got other books as well. So Miguel says we have a tendency to make assumptions about everything. Okay, I can believe that. Um, just turning off my timer here. I want to make sure that I'm not keeping you all over the capacity because I could really talk for 2 hours, which is kind of scary. But we have a tendency to make assumptions about everything. Okay, make the assumption, but then do we believe them? And that's the tricky part, that crossroads of belief. It's like, do we believe this assumption to be true? And that's exhausting because it's like, for me, it was like having a constant conversation with myself about what I was thinking. Like I was thinking about what I was thinking. And that's exhausting. Um, and believe them to be our truth. Okay. So know that we have thousands of thoughts per day, but they don't define us. We're not our thoughts. They're just thoughts. We could think about all kinds of random, crazy things. It doesn't define who we are, right? We make assumptions about what others are doing or thinking, and then we blame and react by sending inaccurate replies. So someone is being a certain way with us. We make an assumption that it's about us. And then when we reply, we're not replying to the truth. We're replying to our assumption, which by now I'm sure some of you have guessed gets us nowhere. Where it can get us is backwards, breaking down a relationship, breaking down communication. And then where does it all end? And there's just that feedback loop that keeps going around. And we make assumptions and we reply based on those assumptions. I've just stated this, that it creates a whole big drama for nothing. And then there's the reparation of it. Can we just say, you know what? I think I made an assumption, and it was inaccurate. I'll have a better think on that next time. And there will be a next time because as long as we're alive, our minds just keep going and going and going. Sadness and drama live in a life was rooted in making assumptions and taking it personally. So my two favorites of Miguel's book is Don't Make Assumptions and Don't Take It Personal. They're kind of like cousins, right? They may not be siblings, but they're kind of like cousins. They're definitely related. So what can we do? I could sit here all day and talk about all of the things, but it would be really helpful, I'm sure, if I shared with you some of the things that we can do. And know that it requires patience. It will happen over time, but it will happen if you keep at it, give yourself grace, allow yourself to feel that maybe you didn't do as well as you would have wanted to, but you'll do it differently next time. I hesitate to say better because they're better and worse. I mean, is it really, or is it just what it is? And can we make it different? And what does that difference actually look like? There's a poster that I saw once, and it had a young hockey player on it. And the caption was, "We miss 100% of the shots that we don't take." So if you can leave this podcast going, okay, well, I learned this one thing. So tomorrow, maybe the shot I'm going to take is just be aware of how many times I'm making an assumption. And that gets back to that Dunning-Kruger information that I think I shared with you on the first episode. Google that one. That's great. It's all kind of connected. Okay. So what can we do about it? As hard as it is, resist judgment and bias that comes to mind automatically. And I'm just going to make myself a note here because I also have information about the benefit of the 90-second rule, which we may get to today. And if not, I'll save it for next time. So we have to think about, is this a fear-based decision? avoiding risks due to perceived danger, even when they might lead to growth. So is it a saber-toothed tiger that I'm dealing with, or is it a 1-month-old kitten? So be real about what the danger is, because we can't be afraid of everything. When Susan and I started the Change Zone, it was scary. It's like we're going on live TV and we had guests, and sometimes we didn't know what was going to happen. There was no redo. So if we forgot what we were going to say, and after a while, it just got easier, and it took 76 episodes, and it was absolutely great as we went along and learned that, stuff is going to happen. Um, Mistakes are going to be made. We're going to trip over our tongue, whatever. And I think I'm just going to add this in. This is a little bit of a rabbit hole, but that's kind of my style. Is that if anyone is thinking about a podcast because you've got some really good information to share or a hopeful story for people, just get started. Just don't worry. Don't worry about how you're going to look or what you're going to say, or um, just get started. Just start doing some investigating. For me, I show up and talk, and I have Nancy. Nancy's my big hero because she makes this all happen. She puts this online. I am not great at any of that. I'll be the first to admit it. But she is golden, and Nancy, you are amazing, and you know that, right? Okay, so impulsive reactions. Uh, we will have them, but if you act on emotion without considering what is the damage that I'm going to do here, that's a good question. Like, if I open my mouth and say this, what possibly could happen? Who might I inadvertently offend? Most of us don't want to offend people. We want to, have some respect and have some congeniality. But sometimes emotions do get the better of us, which is why I feel so strongly about taking the emotional intelligence assessment, because once you are aware of what needs some work, sometimes a house, there might be rotting boards behind the drywall. You can't see that. So you got to peel back the layers. And it's like, oh, okay, well, that board looks like it's going to collapse. Maybe I need to fix it. Maybe I can pay more attention to this area of my life. Um, so the impulsivity needs to needs to be addressed as well. And then resistant to change. Oftentimes I've heard people say, I really don't like change because it's too uncomfortable. So there's another spoiler alert here that that's a good thing. Um, we need to be uncomfortable. If we're not uncomfortable with certain things, then where are the lessons? How can we strive? How can we get better? Some of you might remember your first day in university and what that was like. Your first day in high school, that was probably even worse. And your first time or your first day doing anything, it's going to be scary, and that's normal. So why is this any different? It will be very uncomfortable when you start to learn to, this is another episode, learn how to set boundaries, which is all part of assumptions. Well, I can't set boundaries because, right? Another good book to share with you is 17 Lies and the Truths That Will Set You Free. And there's a chapter in there that's called This Is Just the Way I Am. That's a cop-out because we all have the capacity to change if we're not appreciating and enjoying how our lives are going. We can do it. Is it easy? 100% not. And sometimes when we were prepping for the show, even though we were comfortable with it, I'd get these massive butterflies. It's like, I don't even know why I'm doing this. Like, why bother? Like, what are we doing here? Exactly. Okay. So be less resistant, consider your values, consider what you're saying, um, what you're saying no to when you're saying yes to something else. So saying yes to, I'm super comfortable. I don't really need to change. Life is good the way it is. Maybe, or is it? I don't know. But then what am I missing out on? I want to go and have a group of friends that I can go to the show with or go out for dinner with, but I'm not calling anybody. I'm not reaching out to people. I'm sitting in my house and I'm watching TV. Well, how is that going to help? But I'm afraid to pick up the phone or I'm afraid to text. Sure. If you're not used to something, it's not a skill you've adapted. Of course, you're going to be a little bit uncomfortable, but trust me, the first time is generally the worst time. Well, there you go. I made a rhyme. Look at that. Okay, so tribalism and competition. Ooh, feeling the need to dominate or exclude others for self-preservation. So I'm brilliant. Look at me. I got this going on. I will diminish others because I need to do that to feel better about myself. Sad but true. And we see that in everyday living and sometimes how people behave. And sometimes I think about being in a lineup in elementary school as we did this kind of thing in my day. We'd all have bathroom drills. So we'd all go at the same time, but we'd have to line up outside the bathroom. And there were always kids that were like elbowing in to get to the front, no matter what it was. Maybe they really had to go more than anybody else. I don't know. But say even for getting in a lineup for anything and they were just elbowing through and it's like yeah they the ones that were they just needed to be kind of the class clown and that's okay because maybe it served them as they grew to be adults. All right, so just being respectful of our time here today. I feel almost like it's a coaching call, so I did mention the lizard brain and how to harness it. Um, I think we'll need to dive into that a little bit deeper next time. So I'm just going to make a reminder here for myself. But I would like to share with you because I did mention books. And if anybody is at all interested, man, there's some great authors out there that I've learned from. And I'd like to also share this thought is that I read and I also do Audible with the intention of curiosity and learning about what I don't know, developing questions in my mind. I read less for getting solutions because then if I get a solution, it's like, well, what else is there that I could learn? I don't know. I know there's always something, but I would rather have it provoke thought in me. And then what's the next thing? It's like, okay, I've learned this. I'm uncertain about it. I'm more curious about it. I know it exists. That's the biggest thing for me is knowing that something exists. And then how can I dive deeper into it? So a couple of really cool authors that I've embraced, and there's many, but these are the ones that I've been embracing lately is Rutger Bregman. And I started on Rutger's book, mouthful, Humankind. And it got me interested in his other books. Malcolm Gladwell. I'm just giving you the authors because some of these folks have written multiple books and it would be too long to give you the list. So Malcolm Gladwell, he's a game changer. And then Laws of Human Nature. That was great. I loved it. Robert Greene was the author on that. And what I loved about it is he kind of takes us back to prehistoric behavior. And that I found really fascinating. Jeff Hawkins, I'm reading right now. And his book is A Thousand Brains. Stephen Shedlesky. And yeah, and Jefferson Fisher as well. He's got a wonderful podcast too. So I'm sure this is becoming more obvious. One of the reasons that I did want to start Blind Spots was to share things that I thought might help people. If it helps one person in the whole wide world, that's great. But share resources because I've had thousands of clients over the last 2 decades. And what I realized is that they have really demanding jobs. I knew that, but the average individual doesn't have time to go searching these things out. In the work that I do, this is part of the work that I do. Plus, I love to learn new information. So I thought, well, how could I be the conduit that could share information for folks that maybe they don't have time to research themselves, and maybe they have a blind spot about it. Maybe, just saying. So I'll leave you with a couple of questions and you can have a think on them. I would love to hear from anybody that would like to just, go to blindspotscoaching.ca. There's a area for emails. You can send me an email, or even just email Gail at blindspotscoaching.ca. Send a short story, send a question. There's also a part in the podcast area of my website where if you feel like you would like to be a guest, then just fill your information in there and we'll connect and we'll see if it's a fit. So, lastly, a couple of things to reflect on is with regards to relationships, kind of going right back to the beginning, full circle, how do you show affection? And there's something really cool about that as well. And it's called the appreciation languages. And some of you may have otherwise heard of it as the love languages, the 5 love languages, right? So how do you show affection? How do you feel affection? Like when somebody is showing you a certain behavior, like do you feel like that's affection or it's like no big deal, right? What does quality time look like to you? And these are some of the things that might support you in being able to make some time to study yourself and do the things that I've suggested today. How do you handle conflict? So again, emotional regulation. Do you think about what you're thinking about? Do you wait the 90 seconds, which is where we'll pick up next time? And what is the relationship vibe when you're with people? Do you feel a sense of belonging? What are your thoughts? Are you making assumptions? So there's lots to think about. And I think next week I'll show up solo once again before we bring on another guest and just tie this up with a nice little bow. So if you have any questions about today, I've told you where to get a hold of me. If you feel you've missed any of the resources, they'll also be listed on my YouTube channel. And next time we'll maybe speak a little bit more about the lizard brain. I'll share the 90 seconds with you. And was there anything else? I think that kind of will bring us to the end or not. Maybe I'll find something else along the way that I can share with you all. So, okay, so have a wonderful week. I'm looking forward to putting a bow on this for you next week. And please reach out. I mean, it's just great to hear from listeners and viewers. And you can just go right to my website, click on the podcast, or you can go to the major, like, YouTube and Apple and Spotify and I know there's another one and I can't remember what it is, but yeah, just Google and you'll find me. I thank you for your time. I honor your time. And if there's one teeny thing you learned today, feel free to share it or not. But I just hope that you're all taking one small thing away. So have a super week. I'm grateful for your time. And we'll see you in a week and we'll finish this up. All right. Take good care.